everybody. If you haven't met me yet or missed my keynote, my name is Jana Loeffler, and I have the pleasure of moderating this lovely panel today. I'm going to go ahead and go down the line. If you could say your name, where you're from, what company you work for, and one fun fact about yourself, and then we'll go.
All right. So she didn't prep any of us for this. So I'm Dory Gonzalez Acevedo. I am from Washington, D.C., CEO of Procellarex, which is a life science strategic consulting firm. And one fun fact about me is I've been leading in this space from a regulatory perspective for over 30 years, and I still thought I was going to be out of a job like day one. Still doing the same thing.
Fair.
Nice. My name is Elizabeth Rubino. I am from the lovely state of New Jersey. I currently work for Polycam, and a fun fact about me is I've been to every Major League Baseball ballpark in the country.
Oh, that's impressive. Andy, gotta top that.
My dad actually did that. So my name is Andy Knight. I'm the Automation Panda. I'm a Baltimore boy, but I've been living in North Carolina my whole professional life. Currently, I am Senior Director of Product Management at Cycle Labs. One fun fact about me is that my daily driver is a 1970 Volkswagen Beetle.
It's really cool, especially when you have your co-pilot with you. Oh, we have to share.
I am Kevin Piles. I live in Eagle Mountain, Utah. I work for Family Search. My current title is AI ML SDET 5. I just like to say that. Doesn't actually mean anything. I can't top that. Now, like in shock that somebody's been to every Major League Baseball park, because I've been to Dodger Stadium.
One of the best.
I can give a fun fact about my son who could solve a Rubik's Cube in under 12 seconds.
Wow.
That's awesome.
pretty cool. That's awesome. All right. So, Dory, this will be a great question for you. I'll kick this off and then I'll watch the other questions. So, let's go down the line with this one, but we'll start with you, Dory. Can you name a person who has had a tremendous impact on you as a leader?
Me as a leader. So I think it's one, actually, I don't think he's in the room today. A fellow Ken Shiamoto, who is at Gilead on the West Coast here. He has been one of the leaders in my field because it's a very niche sort of thing that we do in regulatory and life sciences. And he's been really influential in leading the way with me and some others and pushing the envelope in terms of what is and what can be done in a regulated field.
Awesome.
I don't know if they can hear us. Can you guys hear us? So they're
I don't think we're not. So we are not mic'd.
mic'd.
So we have to speak up really
Okay.
fast. The mics that we have in our hand are actually for our live streams. So
Okay.
everybody gets to
Yell.
shout. Yes.
Okay. For me, one of the most influential people that helped me become a leader would be Joe Anzarillo, who was the CEO at Major League Baseball. He was also CTO at Disney and SiriusXM, all three places that I worked with him. The reason why he was so influential to me first was because he was a sponsor of quality. He gave the quality team a seat at, particularly when conversations were about what we were going to deliver, how fast we were going to deliver it. We had a voice in that room. And then secondly, as a woman in tech, and being in the industry for the last 25 years, there weren't a lot of us at the beginning, and he made sure that I was able to grow my career in that industry.
For me, it was my scoutmaster. His name was Richard Oles. My extracurricular growing up from second grade all the way through 12th, I was in the Boy Scouts. And so you do the Cub Scouts, and then you get older, you get in the Boy Scouts. And Scoutmaster Rick helped me become the man I am today.
Awesome.
For me, I've had a lot of great leaders in my life, but I'm going to call out my dad, who has been a fantastic example of pushing really hard at work, home, and being there for everything. And that shows that we can do that we can be fantastic at work and then be fantastic at home.
That's actually pretty cool. I would have to say the person that's probably influenced me the most as a leader was my mother. She not only was a fantastic mother, but she started out as a farmer's daughter who gave her $20 to go to college, got her nursing degree, and then when she retired, she was the director of 4 different family practice clinics throughout the state of Minnesota. So that's I thought it was so. Let's go ahead and yes. I had a great question. Yes, Liz. What is one mistake you witness leaders making more frequently than others?
Um, Probably the biggest mistake that I see leaders make is not allowing themselves to be challenged on a decision or a path. I think it's so important to make sure that when you're a strategy out to get feedback, to get in, especially from the people that are doing the entry level work because they know the work the best and can probably give you the kind of feedback that's going to save you from an expensive decision that might not work out.
Fair. Andy, what's one characteristic that you believe every leader should possess?
Humility. Nobody wants to work with or for someone who is arrogant, right? The
No.
purpose of leadership is to draw out the best in those you are leading. And so if you cannot be humble enough to support them, to listen to them, to encourage them, and rather you're trying to overwrite them with yourself, mm, humility, very important for leadership.
Kevin, how do you help a new employee understand the culture of your organization?
I think by experience, and what I mean by that is taking them around and showing them what the culture is actually like. We can talk till we're blue in the face, but until they experience it, they won't understand.
Fair. Dory, how do you influence your team to invent and push the boundaries?
Oh, I like this question.
Figured you would.
So I actually give my team like a bank account, if you will, right, to go out and experiment with new technology that's available to them. So because we're small and we don't have a lot of bureaucracy, so where they are able to go out and search all the great stuff that you see in the exhibit hall or things that are coming out in small groups, and then they can use that money to go do that.
Excellent. That's a good answer. Andy, this is a fun one because I know you'll have a fun answer to this. What do you like to do to relax?
This will prove whether or not you're a good leader.
I like to spend time with my dog and my family. I have a very no, seriously, I have the cutest little French bulldog in the world. Her name is Suki.
She is adorable.
She's a 20-pound cannonball. I'll show you pictures afterwards, but it's like
And
I'm way too busy, y'all. I got too much to do. My job is something. I come around at these conferences. I work on my car because it's always breaking down. My wife does a dance studio. We have Airbnb. It's da-da-da-da, right? So the idea of what hobbies do you have? I'm just like, sit on the couch, pet the dog, like take a walk. That's yeah. So I enjoy that precious time together.
No, and I think that I'm actually glad this was asked because there is a good message in this. As a leader, you need to demonstrate work life balance. If you can't demonstrate work life balance, then your team your team won't demonstrate work life balance. Whether you believe it or not, your team does look up to you. And so the behaviors that you exude, they're going to pick up on. And it is so critical for for physical health, really the importance of work-life balance and having those hobbies.
I wanted to. Yeah.
So true.
Yeah.
One, as a leader, sometimes you may not realize the influence that you have because we're just living our lives. We're just people. We don't think of ourselves as any different. In fact, many times we think of ourselves as much less than a lot of the people that are on our teams. And I was at a company, and I had just come from a startup. I have a tendency to just kind of think about work all the time and not consider that it's 11 o'clock at night, sending an email out to my team. I really didn't care if they responded at 11 o'clock at night. And in fact, I hope you're not. But I didn't think about what that would do to my team. And so the next morning I got in, and thankfully I had somebody brave enough to say, what's with the 11 o'clock at night email? And I said, well, I don't know. I just had a thought. And they're like, yeah, but now we all think that we have to be on after 5 o'clock. And I said, oh, yeah, that's right. And back to the culture question. The culture was at 5 o'clock, you could turn off your laptop and you didn't have to respond to email. And I had just broken that, or appeared to have broken the rule. So I can now email to at 8 o'clock in the morning, and that's okay. All right, so this is my favorite interview question. I got to an interview and they said, do you have any questions? And I said, yes, I do have a question. How many hours did you work last week? Now, in asking that question, I hope most of you didn't take that as like an attack on you, but the person that was interviewing me, I was going to be over that person. And he took it as, oh crap, I don't think I worked enough for him. And it took me about 6 months to explain to him that what I meant by that was I really hoped that he said 40 hours or less, because I didn't want to work more than 40 hours a week. But he thought that I meant, why didn't you put in 50 hours last week? So we have to be careful, again, with that culture and how others will perceive something as simple as how many hours did you work last week can come off very offensive.
Do you mind if I
Go for it.
So one of the things I've learned is that all of what we're doing, like in software quality, right, is around risk. And we all have different risk tolerances. So one of the things I do with my team is understand where they're at with their risk tolerance and where I'm at with their risk tolerance, and what my personal risk tolerance is, what our customers' risk tolerance is, because that's ultimately we're making some decisions. But no one can be your mind, right? So understanding each other's and where we come to space where then we make a decision collectively or understand more about how to make those decisions, I think has been one of the things about emulating leadership, right? Like, because we put our teams in situations sometimes when we're not there, and they need to be able to navigate that too, right? So leading by example is like a huge part of that. And so demonstrating that, and if you say it, you got to do it too. So thanks.
I think as you might have a couple thoughts on this one. Imposter syndrome as a leader, and how do you combat it?
Yes, I had imposter syndrome sitting on this panel today. How do I combat it? So I mentor women in conversation a lot as a result, and sometimes I have to take my own advice. But the way that I try to combat it for myself is like plan, prepare, plan, prepare. So I never walk into a room not having thought about at least most of the scenarios that can happen. And then I put on some really awesome music, like loud, empowering kind of music, and I walk in the room anyway, and I realize like an hour after I walk out of that room, it's not gonna matter, and I just do it. And that has always served me very, very well and allowed me to grow in my career. I don't let anyone scare me out of a room or a conversation. Even if I'm terrified, I'm not saying it. I'm just showing up anyway.
Awesome. Andy, has there been a mistake you've made in your career that you could change, and how did you rectify it?
Oh man.
Which
That's a hard one.
Have there been mistakes? Yes.
Don't explain. explain.
Which
Just make them.
one?
Mistake number one. I said I would do this panel.
Oh gosh. Oh gosh. I mean, there have been times that I have pushed bugs to production. There have been times where I shared false information in meetings accidentally. Um, there have been times I have been inconsiderate to other people and not realized it. Um, what I have found is that in those kinds of situations, we all make mistakes. When it comes to light, don't hide it, don't cover it up, right? Be vulnerable. Realize, oh shoot, I messed up on this one. Apologize to whom it is appropriate. Um, if there is a fix to make, such as, oh, let me go send a patch, or let me go send a private apology message, or let me think how I can be better in the next situation. Maybe I need to shut my mouth rather than just keep talking. Those kinds of things, the immediate and then the long term.
Yeah, I would say one thing I've learned as a leader is owning my mistakes. If you're going to have a team that trusts you at all, if you're going to want to have a team that rallies behind you at all, you have to own your mistakes. And it just shows that if you own them, then it makes them more comfortable having mistakes. And I would rather have my team fail fast, own it, and fix it than have them try and hide it and then I find out later. So that's a big thing for me. Dory, how do you rally your team when they're feeling frustrated about their projects?
Oh, so we have powwows. You have, I don't know, those that have kids, like you kind of have that tantrum time, and you let the tantrum happen. So we have that tantrum solo, alone, without the customer or without whoever doing that, and then we come back, right? Like, because it's getting it out and just being heard is half the battle. So once you express what your frustrations are, then we can make a plan to move forward.
That's awesome. I like that. Powwows. Kevin, what was the most difficult decision you have made as a leader? Calling Jenna
Probably-
for advice?
I think multiple times it's standing up for what I believed was right, even if it meant that it hurt myself. And at one company, I spoke directly to my boss and told him directly, you don't care about my team. You really should fire us. And that was a very difficult conversation to have, and but was really important to have to help him understand where I was coming from and to help him make decisions that needed to be made.
I fired a customer.
Yeah, that's good. Sometimes that's the best decision you can make is firing the customer.
It's easier.
Painful, but
Good. I mean, and I think to Kevin's point, I recently pulled my team aside and I said, "Team, we are underperforming. We are underperforming. We need to fix that. We need to stop being complacent and we need to stop acting like a centralized testing organization because we are not providing any value to the business. We have to start looking at how do we engineer quality? How do we be quality engineers? And we need to own our own story." And I'll be honest, that was really hard. You stand up into a team of people that, report into you, and you're going to walk out of there going, oh my God, they're going to hate me because, I said, we're all underperforming. But at the end of it, I would rather have somebody come in a room and tell me I'm underperforming and give me all the tools. I said, we'll provide training. I will help you. We can have discussions on how we can be better as a team. But it's up to you to own your story, to own your future. And it was hard, but I think it was actually a really good decision to make. All right. Andy, How do you work to support other leaders without making them feel like you stepped into their space?
Oh, I think this is a particularly pertinent question for me in this time because my title is senior director, but I actually don't have direct reports.
Ooh.
Yeah. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And so there are times where you may have direct authority over something or someone, but ultimately, if you're trying to move people and move organizations to achieve some kind of common goal, it's a peopling problem. And a lot of times, the number one thing you have to do is use your influence. Um, and so part of that is having good rapport, forming relationships, gaining trust, showing that you're a decent person, um, and not dictating things to people. You have to do this. You should do this. But rather, if you think there is a direction we should be going, let's talk about it. Share from your perspective. I think we should be doing this. I think this would be really valuable. Try to have that inception moment. Plant seeds and water them, right? Um, get people on board with a greater vision, right? Um, I think that is much more effective in trying to make change happen. A good example of this at my current company, when I was hired more as just an engineer. And this was 2 years ago. And very quickly, I realized that we didn't really have a product vision. We were just doing some tickets. And then after that, it wasn't really clear from up above where we were. And my company builds a test automation platform. And so me, having my test engineer cap on, I just started talking with my team and my manager saying, hey, what if we build these kinds of things? I think it would be really helpful to have a report dashboard. Maybe instead of building our own IDE app, we should just plug into VS Code. And I just started talking with not only people on my team, but also in other parts of the company. And from that, I got extra perspective of things that customers and partners were struggling with. And so all that came together, and our vision that we came up with as a company became very synergistic. And so, yes, in a sense, I was leading the vision, you could say, but it was really all of us together, coming together. I was just the one that kind of brought it together as one. That's a great uh, to extend influence and do more.
Liz, how do you add train and explore versus working on projects when you're understaffed?
It's
Very
not a
good.
problem in quality at all. It kind of connects with what Andy was saying. If you want to influence how people behave and how people treat your team, how to test, and the fact that you're understaffed and you need more people in relationships, networking, and influence across people. And sometimes I do that. First of all, networking, I mean internal networking. I mean like having people that are in executive positions, people that make decisions about budget. And it doesn't mean that the first conversation you have is about the budget. You're just talking to them and developing a relationship and like becoming work friends so that when you come to have that conversation, it's not hard and you're not only there for one thing. It's about planting the seed and things that aren't just in your sphere. And then I think the other way is you prove your problem, right? You have to show up with data to support what you're trying to achieve.
You're
So
my
if
new
you
favorite friend.
if you're understaffed, prove it. Prove it. What's the problem? How can you solve the problem? And don't just show up with the problem, show up with the solution. If the
Oh.
solution is more automation, prove why you need it. If the solution is more headcount, prove why you need it. And the cherry on top is if you can somehow take a company initiative and weave in what you need to that initiative, you win. It's happening.
Or value.
Or
their
value,
values.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Like for example, Polycam right now is talking. They're working on SOC 2 compliance. And I'm like, want SOC 2 compliance? Workflow, features. it. I'm not just walking up to my boss and saying, we need more people, this doesn't work.
I tell all my managers that their team should be allocated at 80% a week. So 80% a week, because that gives them 20% to answer emails, attend different meetings, all of those different things, and fit in training. I am a huge, huge believer in, if you are doing training or learning, there's learning that you need to do to help you be better at your job. You have to do those during work hours. Of course, if you choose to do them outside of work hours, that's your choice. But for the fact of the matter is I, as a leader, need to create that space for you to do that, because I can't expect you to take your free time to learn, especially if it's going to come back and benefit the company. You learning benefits the company.
Can I ask a question? So how do you go the ladder and justify making sure that everyone understands that that 20% is going to be for training?
I fire a lot of people. I say that by I fire customers when it comes to it. I will say a lot of times, let's be honest, I won't say no, but I say we have to find another solution. I'm currently understaffed. Here's my data to show that I'm understaffed, that I don't have the capacity to do this. But let's think of other ways that we can make this happen for you. Maybe my team, maybe we can hire a contractor for a little bit until my team frees up. Different solutions, and that's exactly what those numbers are there. Who really don't seem to want our help. I'm like, then why am I investing hours in you? And then I come up with a solution. And it's asking for help. As a leader, a lot of times it's, I'm understaffed. So I'm going to go to this other leader over there and say, okay, I'm understaffed. Do you have any wiggle room? Help me help you. Or, if you can lend a person for this time, 6 months when this person's off. It's about relationships and all of that stuff. All right. Let's see. Oh, actually, we're going to do one that we're going to ask one of the entire panel. If you could work anywhere in the world, where would that be and why? Try and keep it to like 1 or 2 sentences. Why? Go, Kevin. Yeah, I see you.
In the Bahamas at the Atlantis Paradise Hotel, in the penthouse suite.
Haven't thought about that at all, have you?
First time I've heard that question.
Andy, do you have an answer?
I'm assuming you mean a type of company rather than a location.
It doesn't. It says you could work anywhere in the world. Where would it be and why? You can interpret that in whichever way you want.
Sure.
Oh, can I answer this one for you? You want?
I mean, you're not wrong. Do love that place. I want to work somewhere is a great opportunity for me to deliver value and to make a difference. I want to work somewhere where I can have my own grand adventure, grand epic, that there's a narrative that I can unfurl in my own advancement, in the advancement of those around me, and of the company. Historically, I'm very involved in SDET. Some weird left turn into developer relations. Woof. I just see builder, not builder. And as the contributor builder, the product management function. I realize I want to do things, and so maybe my is not within the testing sphere, but I am fairly certain I will always be building something in technology, as well as building myself. And that's the kind of
Wow. Okay, Liz, you get to top that one.
Okay.
So Maui, that's where I want to work. But as far as types of work, I want to work with women in tech, women in business. I want to help them grow. I want to help them not be afraid to walk into rooms. I want to help them get over their imposter syndrome. If I can do that in any space, I don't really care what the company is. Yeah.
That's awesome. I echo a lot of that, Liz. Actually, so for me, I'm an entrepreneur, and I've realized that for myself as a neurodivergent, um, and that was the turning point for me to understand enough about myself as a leader to know that my best self comes out when I can lead in a different capacity, not inside an organization. So when I made that transition about 15 years ago, that was a turning point for me. So whatever I do now is with my own company, which is growing tremendously, which is fantastic. But that's because I realized I did my own growth work to understand what it was that I could be in this space for myself. Um, Women in tech and women in life sciences is very important to me. I do a lot of work there, and I make relationships there all the time. And so one day on the beaches of Nice, right? That would be a ideal situation.
I love it. So I want to work anywhere that allows me to bring my chickens to work. I love my chickens, my tiny dinosaurs. So that and so some of you may or may not know that I worked with the Walt Disney Company from 2011 until 2018, and now I left for a few years, and I came back in January. And the way I actually came back was a good friend of mine and a mentor of mine at the Walt Disney Company reached out to me and said, "Okay, Jana, I know you're not in the market, but I have this director of QE position open. Can you at least review the job description and see if you know of anybody that would meet the needs?" And I said, "Okay." So I look over the job description. And I actually handed it to Melissa Benua, and she read it too. And she looked at me and she goes, "The only thing that it's missing is your name must be Jana." So I sent it. I sent an email back to him, and I said, "This job description looks great. It looks like a fabulous opportunity. Of course, I'd be interested." Wink, wink, wink. And so don't worry, he didn't just hire me. I did go through the whole interview loop. But at the end of the day, one of the reasons why I decided to come back was because I would have gotten to work with him. And for me, it is so important to respect your leadership and have them be somebody you want to work with. Because if you don't want to work with your leader, your day-to-day job is going to be miserable. And he was somebody that I admired as a person. He is the kindest person some of the that I have met. He is always happy, bubbly, happy. But he gets things done too. He's a leader in technology, um, all of that. So when I had the opportunity, he could have been working at a completely different company, but to have the opportunity to work with him was one of my big reasons for coming back. So, oh, thank you. um, Kevin, what tips do you have for someone in the role of automated QA software engineer to get to a leadership position? So what tips would you give to an IC to go up to a leadership position? What should they know?
I think I'll go a little bit with what Andy already suggested, and that is start influencing in ways that you can. Look for opportunities to grow, but to show that you want leadership positions. And there are, if you ever go through the Project Management Institute, you'll notice that pretty much anything can be a project. And if you demonstrate that, hey, I was over this project, which was actually setting up tables, right, which had nothing to do with my job, but this is how I showed leadership in accomplishing that. And that's what leaders do, is we do a lot of dashboards and a lot of slideshows. and a lot of meetings. And if you show that you can make any of those things done well or efficiently, then we say, hey, maybe we can give them more projects or more responsibility. And that normally leads to those opportunities. And I do strongly recommend that you learn how to be a leader, which there's lots of books, there's lots of training. You're not going to get all of that in just one panel, but that's different from being fantastic at your current job.
Yep.
So you can be an amazing automation engineer and a horrific leader. And you can be in the wrong spot. Maybe you are born to be a leader, but you're stuck as an automation engineer. So look for those opportunities.
My biggest words of advice when it comes to moving from an IC to a leadership position is ask. Talk to your manager, talk to your leadership, and tell them what your intention is and what your goals are. As I tell people, I can't promote you if I don't know you want to be promoted. I can't help you grow if you don't tell me you want to grow. So that's my biggest key is asking. I know some people can get a little nervous about that. So usually what I say is, you can express to your manager, you know what, I'm really interested in going to leadership. Can you tell me how you did it? I'd like to learn from you. I'd like to know more about how you became a leader and what's your story.
Can I tell you how I did that?
Oh dear goodness.
So I was again in an interview. Great question. Where would you like to be in 5 years? And I was looking across from the director of quality assurance at the time, and I said, I'd like to have your job. So probably go with Jana's version rather than my version. But I think it also shows the difference that we understand that some people don't ask for those positions, but you generally do get looked over if you don't ask at some point in time, or you don't show that you want that opportunity. You can be less direct and blunt, than I was, but you have to ask. I was just talking to somebody who's a good friend who might be in here, who said, I don't want to be in management. I don't want that responsibility. I want to retire exactly where I'm at because I love it and I get to do cool stuff every day. And he's fantastic at his job. So he's never brought up leadership. And in fact, we've asked him, would you like to be a leader? No, I do not. So we don't assume that you want to be a leader. We assume that you're happy where you're at if you haven't said anything otherwise.
Yep. Can I add something to that? Go for it.
I would also say find a mentor that's going to give you honest feedback and take it and try to improve. Because I can't tell you how many times I've been in relationships with a boss that has just given you the chat GPT year-end review feedback that doesn't actually give me anything to work on. But if your boss is actually providing feedback for you to work on it. They're giving it to you for a reason. And if you don't know how, ask them, how do I work on this? Because they probably see something in you that just needs to be tweaked in order for you to get that next role or move up to that next position. I've had so many people that are like, I want to be a leader. And then I say, okay, this is what you have to do. And they're like, I don't need to do that. Okay.
This is being recorded, right? So I can play that back for my team. Okay, good. No. Oh no, in all seriousness, the same meeting that I had with my team where I told them they were underperforming, I said to every one of them, go ask your manager where you could be doing better. I said, maybe the way I messaged this, I had this message towards you wasn't the best way. That's great feedback for me. Let me know. I am not perfect. Nobody in this room is perfect or doesn't have some area that they could improve upon. So ask your manager where that could be. And if your manager doesn't have anything, come to me. Now, I have a team of between 35 to 40 people. And yeah, I'm a director, but I can provide feedback to every single individual on my team. And the sad news is I think a lot of leaders out there can't do that.
Yeah.
So what's a sign of a good leader is somebody who pays attention and cares about their team enough to know that, know those quirks, know those things. And sometimes it's even the feedback of, you know, I don't have a lot of insight into what you're doing. So I can't give you direct work feedback, but that's my feedback to you is I I don't know. So that tells me you need to speak up more, that we need to have you need to take initiative in, sharing your experiences and what you're working on with me. So awesome. Um I like this question. So did it go? There we go. Okay. I am going to read the softer version of this before, instead of the, well, I'll just read it. And anyone in the panel can jump in and say this. How do you deal with talented assholes? I know, we're all like, they are the bane of our existence.
Well, aren't we all sometimes?
Yeah, we are.
Right? I mean, if we're honest, that's kind of why we're at where we're at. And so I think that calling a spade is worth it in those moments. So to the feedback part too is right, like feedback and how you give it and what you give is important, but at the same time, dialing it down when appropriate.
That's the key.
It's when it's appropriate and when not to, is really it, and that's a game day decision, right?
Yep.
Like in the moment, following your gut. I'm really into gut intuition, right? Like if it's not sitting well in my gut, that's just not good, right? And so reading the room, how to read the room, who you're talking to, when you're talking to, all those sorts of things.
Yeah, and I would say sometimes you have to take it a step further if you have a difficult personality, and find out why they're a difficult personality. If they're a difficult personality for the sake of being a difficult personality, that's when I pull out the fact that part of your job description is communication and collaboration. I can help you with those skills. Or if you feel like you are just so miserable that you have to have this type of attitude, I am more than happy to work with you on your resume and interviewing skills to find you a position that aligns better with your passions and that you will be happier with. Isn't that nice?
Very well done. I was going to say something different, but
Yeah. But then there are also, you have to, I hired a gentleman once who, for all intents and purposes, was a bully. He would come in and, to some of the junior testers, he's like, that is the simplest thing. If you don't even know how to do that, you shouldn't be in this company. You shouldn't be in this role. And just, I mean, continue to harp and really get on him. And so I pulled him aside once and I said, look, knock it off. This is not conducive to a good culture, a good atmosphere, a good team. And then it was interesting because he started to push back on me and I just said, stop, take 30 seconds, walk away, and when you can talk to me like a professional, you can come back and talk with me. And he did. And we got talking, and I got to know him a little bit more as a human. And I found out that he had worked with the same company for 15, 20 years. He was a guy that worked with another group of guys who all of them worked together, and their communication style was to pretty much beat each other up. They'd get in a room and yell and beat each other up until they all came to a conclusion. I know, verbally. I mean, they would literally verbally abuse each other until they figured it out. But they were very open and honest about their feelings. And I said, well, you haven't earned that trust yet with the team. And this team may never operate like that. So you have a couple of choices here. You can either choose that, once again, this is not the right company for you, this is not the right culture that you want to work in, or I can help you with this. And he's like, no, 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 I never want to feel like a bully. I actually didn't even realize I was doing that. So please help me. And we came up with a code word. So every time he started to act like a bully, the what was it? The team would I think the team would yell moo because he was a bully. but it was enough for, him to stop, everybody to get a chuckle and reset. And that way, they could provide feedback in the moment. Everybody felt comfortable because it was kind of silly, but he ended up being one of the best test leads that I ever hired. So sometimes you just kind of have to dig into it a little bit and see, is it intentional or are they just really unhappy? All right. Do, 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 do. Ooh, here's a good one. We'll go through the panel on this one. On everybody's thoughts, is there still a role for a QA leader who is hands off with automation and coding, but excels in leadership and goal setting? Do you want to kick us off, Liz? Because I see a
Yeah.
tremendous yes from you.
Yes, because that's not what leaders do necessarily. They're not necessarily doing the day-to-day work. I mean, how many CTOs or CEOs do you know that can do every single job in the company? They don't have to. That's what you're there for, right? They're there to lead. They're there to drive strategy and vision and organizational goals. It's more about that when you get to a certain level. Um, one of my mentors called it thought leadership. You're there to think, you're there to guide, you're not necessarily there to do the day-to-day work, but it's helpful if you know enough to guide the strategy. Obviously, like, you should know at least the minimum, but do you have to be able to jump in and do every single person's job? Absolutely not. That makes no sense. No company would function.
Yeah, and I think a good point to that too is, I know for myself, like, I'm totally curious about AI and creating agents and stuff like that. So I may not have time for that in my day-to-day job, because really, as a director, I don't have time for that in my day-to-day job. But that doesn't mean at home I can't play around with
Right.
it a little bit, and things like that. Like I said, if you're going to do specific training for your job,
Yeah.
definitely focus on your. But that doesn't mean you can't play and have fun. I mean, we all search the internet at home at some point in time. So
But I do think as a leader, those that want to follow you want to know that you have some sense
Sense
of
of
what you're doing,
technology. Yep,
right? And
course.
so being that removed sometimes could, depending on the
Be a
organization,
disservice. Yep.
as how many steps up or separate everybody is. But I just recently talked to a CEO of a company that absolutely understood the product inside and out, and I was astonished. Like, oh my god, like, it's the first time like someone that high up actually knew what the product did. And that is few and far between
Yep.
these days. And I think the folks that follow him are very inspired by that, right? And so I think it's a careful balance. There's no way to move up in an organization or grow the organization without having
Of
that.
course.
But at the same time, it's like you see that you get people passionate about what you're doing, and that's part of like the fun.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And you do have to have at least a minimum understanding of your product. That's why I honestly think quality engineers and testers make phenomenal leaders when they choose to be leaders, is because usually our job is to know the product inside out and backwards. So we already have that understanding. We may not test everything, but we know how it all integrates. We know how it all works. We see the big picture, and we can take that big picture. We know it from a testing perspective, a user perspective, but also a technical perspective, even though we didn't code it. All right, Andy,
Yo.
how do you balance when you need a collective feedback before making a decision versus needing to make a decision without consulting a team?
Wow.
Big question.
That last part had me a little bit concerned, saying making a decision without consulting the team. Um, I guess maybe there are certain kinds of things that need to be held privately for whatever reason. But I think I'm going to speak in terms of my work as product manager at my company. And so there would never be a time where I would make a decision unilaterally without talking to a fairly wide array of people across my company, simply because part of my job is synergy, right? And I want multiple perspectives, right? I want to understand challenges our ops team is facing as they're trying to do customer support. I want to understand what the customer thinks they need. I want to understand what we can do in terms of our engineering right now, right? I want to know what the sales team can and can't sell, what messages are landing and not. Um, but the way I want to take this question is I also have to balance with the fact that we are building a test automation platform, and I happen to have a lot of expertise in test automation and what makes good products. And part of the reason I was brought into my company was because, almost shockingly, nobody else in the company really had that kind of expertise. There's stories as to reasons why, right? But part of my job was to lead in the sense of knowing what was good from what was bad, rather than having to spend a whole bunch of time churning and burning through iterations of experimentation, right? And so it is a bit of a balance, right? Because there are times I just want to throw down my informed captain card and say, we're going to build this feature because I know it's going to be important. Um, but I don't ever want to do that. And what I prefer to do in the times where I feel like there's something we need to build or a decision that needs to be made, I try to pre-socialize that. I try to get people on board before there's any kind of final decision made or announcement put out there, so that people feel like they have a part in it, right? And that way it feels more like a team effort, even if I was the one very much driving forward something. And when I officially push for it, I can say there's support for it, and I have evidence for it, and I have some more data to back it up, not just we're making this because I feel like it. And I feel like that exercise of influence has been very successful in navigating that dilemma.
So I have a quick question for the panel. How many of you identify yourself as an introvert? All right. So for those two, what strategies can introverts use to lead and manage teams effectively? It is a great
Wow.
question.
Great question.
I would say lean into the skills that you have. So one of the skills that I think as an introvert I'm better at is one-on-one conversations. So my soft skills have served me well in leadership positions. One of the skills I don't have is sitting up here in front of you lovely people. So this is very uncomfortable for me. But as an introvert, having more one-on-one conversations, having those kind of, interpersonal relationships has helped me still be in a leadership position, still be recognized as a leader in the organization, still get sort of that respect that you want as a leader. How about you?
Do you want to answer?
Sure. So technically, Myers-Briggs, I'm actually an ambivert. Every time I've taken the test, I'm 50-50 down the middle, introvert, extrovert.
Yeah.
So I guess I can still answer this one. Keep in mind that introversion doesn't mean that you don't like people. It's that interaction wears you down. It's like you have the old iPhone where the battery just drains more quickly. And so what I would say is protect your battery, right? Make sure that you take time for yourself. As a leader, you tend to be in a position where you give more than you receive. So make sure you're taking that time to charge up, because you don't want to explode and catch on fire.
I say, yeah, I describe myself as a extroverted introvert, because I can do things like sit up on the panel and give presentations, but after the keynote that I delivered, I had to go back to my room and decompress. I mean, that drained a lot of my battery. I will leave this conference. I love these conferences, but I go home and crash because it's a lot. But I also use it as a kind of a hidden superpower. One of the lessons that I've learned from people who tend to be more introverted, things like that, may not excel in group situations, is you provide them with slido.com to ask questions so they don't have to ask questions in front of a big group. We do team retrospectives and we do it real time, but we do it using Mentimeter where they can write anonymous comments in real time and we can discuss it. So they don't have to, they can feel there's that psychological safety of being able to share without having to feel like they're in the spotlight.
So a couple years ago, I came out. I'm also gay, but I also came out of the closet around my neurodivergence publicly, and I talk about that publicly, and I talk about my mental health publicly, in order to level set who's in the room, and also to make sure my team, my customers, who we all share a collective time with, whether it's a short-term project, long-term project, to understand each other. Right? At the end of the day, we're all human, right? And all of us have needs, but we don't know what they are unless we ask for them, like we were talking before, and to normalize them. So as leaders, to continue to have those dialogues, even though that they might be uncomfortable, for me, it's been a process and a journey of unveiling those masks over the years, so that it's not just my private life, it's also my public life, and I don't have to code switch anymore. And so that is a huge opportunity. And then with AI, it has also helped a lot. I'm just very dyslexic, and I have a lot of auditory processing issues. But with AI, it's now level set a whole nother area for a lot of people that can then do things. But you won't know that in your teams unless you start socializing to make it all normal for everybody. So
So I appreciate that. You and I are going to be really good friends. I did this at my tutorial. I was absolutely, if you were in my tutorial during one of the breaks, I announced that I actually shouldn't have apologized, but I did apologize to my tutorial saying, you know what, I understand I'm not on my A game. What a lot of people don't realize about me is I'm a widow. My husband died suddenly, March of 2024, and Tuesday would have been his 50th birthday. And I just didn't pay attention, and my tutorial was on the schedule, so I did my best to kind of put on that mask and push forward. But I found that, it relieves a lot off of my shoulders when I share with others what's going on. So I'm very open with my team that I have a therapist, and I highly recommend therapists. So
but it's a peopling thing,
it
right?
is
And
a
so what
peopling
Andy said
thing.
before, like that's the job as a leader,
Yep.
right? And if you don't know yourself well enough yet to do that, then you're probably not ready to step into that leadership position.
Yep, yep. There is a vulnerability that you have to step into as a leader. All right, this is going to be the last question, and I think it's a great one for us to kind of go down the panel with. I'm going to start with Kevin. What words of wisdom can you give to a new leader striving to climb the corporate ladder while being an inspiring leader? That was a mouthful.
That was a mouthful.
What words of wisdom do you have for people?
Follow your dreams.
Aww.
Um,
I know.
I think it's so important to have passion and to live passionately. And so whatever, and that doesn't define what that is for you, but whatever that is for you, it sounds cheesy, but like follow your dreams. Um, eh, you're going to do much better as a leader and as an individual if you define who you are first and what you want first, and then you can influence, you can partner, you can explore much better everything that's out there if you know who you are first.
Andy.
Nobody will stop you from doing the right thing.
Yeah.
For me, I would say the best lesson I ever learned was to take care of the people you lead, and they will take care of you.
I encourage folks to seek to fail every day. So that has changed my life to know that failing is okay. And that if I continuously know that every day I'm going to fail at something, then my constant drive to improve me and how I show up in the world is what's the result of that.
Yep. I like all of those, so I'm gonna it's like you took what I said, you took what I said, you took what I was gonna say. So what I'm gonna say at the end of this is also to climb the ladder, advocate for yourself. And that's different than bragging. That's different than being egotistical, but advocating. Celebrate your own wins, even if they're little wins. Take pride in what you're doing and sharing that with others. All right. Well, that concludes our session for today. Thank you, everybody. Let's give a round of applause for all the panelists. Thank you for all of your wonderful questions. And if you want Disney stickers, come see me.